The situation is a mess. I, female 27, am expecting my first baby with my husband. This is the first grandchild in the family, in-laws, and they said that if the baby is a boy, we should give him my father-in-law's name. He's dead due to cancer. I had no problem with that. This happened before we found out the gender of the baby. My husband and his family had me do things like attend prayers and do other rituals before the reveal at the doctor's. Of course, I was not too fond of that, but went with it to keep the peace. The doctor's appointment came, and it turned out to be a girl. My husband cried in the car, turned his phone off to hide from his family, and finally told them. His mom and the others made their frustration and disappointment clear, which bothered me because my daughter deserves to be celebrated. But they ghosted me for days, then started coming over and visiting, constantly referring to my daughter as my son, claiming the results were false and pretending it's a boy. I had several fights with them after they refused to stop it, and my husband sided with them despite seeing how wrong and unreasonable what they were doing was. We didn't speak for a while. Sister-in-law called to apologize, then informed me she arranged for a baby shower for me. I was so excited and happy. But when I arrived, I saw blue balloons, a blue cake with father-in-law's name and decorations around. I was so confused, I had to sit down. Sister-in-law explained that they were still hoping the gender results were false and it was a boy. I looked at my husband and he agreed with her. So I lost my temper and yelled at them all, calling them delusional and telling them to stop treating my daughter like she's unwanted and act like she doesn't exist by throwing a party for their imaginary grandson. Mother-in-law broke down crying. I took my bag and walked out immediately. They started yelling and my husband followed me outside and started arguing about how I insulted his family and his dad's memory by acting like that. I told him to wake up and see the insanity of his family's behavior. He said they needed time to process that it's a girl, not a boy as they expected, and insisted I play along and they'll soon get over it. I said absolutely not and demanded he takes me home. He said no, so I called an Uber and left. He was fuming. He called 15 times then texted that he won't be coming home until I get my butt over and apologize for ruining everything they've done for me and accusing them of being mentally unstable. I haven't responded yet. He's constantly pressuring me to get right with his family before we even talk about anything else. So am I the idiot? So where are you supposed to accept all the boys' gifts to? A baby shower is what sets the baby up for their first month, a year. Sounds like all of them need some real help in their mourning. You are not the idiot, and this sounds like a horror movie. I'd be telling husband he can just stay with his family and not come home since they are apparently so much more important than his daughter. I can't think of any sane reason why your in-laws need this much time to process having a granddaughter instead of a grandson. For your daughter's sake, please do not have any more children with this man until and unless he straightens out and straightens his family out too. This is insanity. His family is projecting and creating undue stress on you and your baby. They may resent her and treat her poorly for simply being a girl. If you have a son later on, will your daughter be treated as less than? These are all things to consider. Husband and in-laws are toxic and their behavior is alarming. It might be time to consider if this is the family you want to raise your daughter around. Your husband is a massive idiot for doing this to you. Holy Batman, you are not the idiot in any way, shape, or form. They are freaking delusional. I know the whole family on the husband's side is horrible, but your husband's the real problem. He is who you married, unfortunately, and he freaking cried over his child being a girl and not a boy. I would go berserk if anyone ever reacted that way to me or anyone close to me. The misogyny is just too much. I, female 33, very recently started working as a waitress. I'm a high school dropout and my husband, 30, used to be the sole provider. The reason I got a job was that I had to. My husband was against it, but I had to be able to get the things I wanted without feeling guilty about using my husband's money since he has debts. When I started working, he had an attitude and kept making remarks about it. Last Friday, we had guests over and I served them coffee. My husband wanted iced tea, so I went to make it. I gave him his drink then went to sit with the guests. After he got done, he started shaking the glass with the ice, making a loud sound inside it. He looked at me, said he needed more and told me to refill it. I got up and went to the kitchen to refill it, then returned, gave the glass to him, and sat back down. Again, after he got done, he told me to go refill it. I was getting heated but just took it to the kitchen to refill it. I came back, gave it to him, and sat back down. Minutes later, he started shaking it, telling me to refill it again. I got upset and asked him why I should, and he said that it's technically my job. I was appalled. I told him he was out of line to treat me as a servant and he needed to knock it off. He basically responded with, "You have no problem serving strangers. You shouldn't have a problem serving me then." Then gave examples of how if I'm a masseuse, then I'm expected to give him a massage. If I'm a cook, then I'm expected to cook for him. I said since he works in a car dealership, then he's expected to get me a car. He said it's not the same, but I argued that those strangers pay me to do what I do. He clapped back with the, "I pay to keep a roof over your head" statement. I couldn't take it anymore. I got up, walked up to him, took the glass out of his hand while he was smoking like he had one-upped me, and walked straight to the trash can and dumped it in there. Then I casually walked past him and sat down. He was staring the entire time, not believing what I'd just done. Finally, the guest sensed the tension in the room and said they had to leave. The argument ensued, and he went off on me saying that I was being passive-aggressive and disrespectful. I told him I'd had it with him mocking my job, that I just got to lighten his burden and help him with the debts. He said he wasn't mocking it and that I was being melodramatic, getting offended over nothing. He ranted about how humiliating and disrespectful my behavior was when I dumped the glass in the trash can and told me I made him look bad in front of our guests and should fix it in front of them, maybe hinting that I apologized publicly, but I said I wouldn't be doing this and he shouldn't hold his breath. He took offense to this statement and caught me childish and petty. Am I the idiot? Lord, save all that money and get your j and away from this man. He's mad that you have an income, so he can't control you. The only misstep you might have made was not in refilling his tea just like he wanted and then dumping it over his head. Don't worry about the j yet. Leaving him is the most important thing here. If you wanna get your j later, that's great. But you already have a job, so you don't need to wait around until you have your j to leave. Why do all the good ladies have such idiots for husbands? Because they don't act like idiots in the beginning of the relationship. Also, the guests sent some tension after you threw out the glass, after you sent you to fetch him drinks like a servant and had an argument out loud about how it's literally your job to wait on him hand and foot. Your guests were uncomfortable way before that, and if they didn't call him out when he started that BS, then they suck too. Just because he's embarrassed does not mean you embarrassed him. He embarrassed himself by acting like an entitled idiot. My brother-in-law was adopted. He came from a broken home and it affected his personality. He always wanted and planned to have kids with his ex-wife, but she turned out abusive and he was barely able to escape from her with my and my husband's help. He was devastated and kept saying his future and family ended before it was started, but we assured him he was lucky he didn't have kids with his ex and got out easily. He's now 35, single and lives alone and has been talking about adoption a lot lately. Yesterday, he visited and brought it up again. I didn't feel he was ready despite saying that he was. I told him he's a product of an affair that ruined 2 families and that he had a rough unstable childhood that created some serious damage manifesting in a number of mental health issues that he hasn't worked on. So I don't think adoption is a good idea, especially given his feelings, and he should reconsider his decision. He looked at me shocked, but I told him not to take this personally because I was just pointing out that it's not fair to subject an innocent child to his mental health issues. In other words, I just don't think he's ready to be anybody's dad. He became quiet all of a sudden, then took his phone and key and said that I was rude and hurtful, then left and shut the door behind him. My husband asked what happened and why his brother left. I told him about the conversation I had with him and he went off on me saying I messed up and that this was none of my concern and I just made his brother feel worthless and incapable. I said no. I was just making sure he was ready, but he said I don't get to decide if he's ready or not and told me I had to call his brother and apologize to him for the rude crap I said. I declined because I don't think I was wrong for telling the truth as it is. We had an argument and he isn't speaking to me now. I understand how my brother-in-law might have felt, but I was just giving my opinion on this matter and a bit of advice. So am I the idiot? Wow. Just wow. Is this your first day on earth? Of course that unsolicited advice would set him off. I'm assuming that you're not a social worker or therapist. But even if you are, it wasn't your place to tell this guy that his family of origin issues has made him too broken to parent effectively. What you said was cruel and you don't have the relationship with him to make or share your unfair judgment of him. If I was your husband, I'd be seriously reevaluating our relationship. I cannot understand how you felt justified in saying what you did. This was peak narcissistic behavior, oblivious to the needs of the moment and the role you play in it. Holy cow, you are the idiot. You are the idiot. There's being honest and then there's being cruel. You fall on the latter and are remorseless because you think you know it all. Even if he has issues, what you said was worded wrong and incredibly hurtful. Maybe he needs therapy to help in this process, but it's not up to you to act superior and throw his past in his face. I told him he's a product of an affair that ruined 2 families. Geez. If anything, his birth parents' actions ruined 2 families, not him. He had no control over being born. You sound really judgmental and you're using the excuse of being honest for acting like an idiot. Have a little tact and be better. You can talk about his childhood all you want, but it's clear someone raised you wrong too. It seems like everyone is skipping over the fact that Op says that he had unresolved mental health issues. Op, you're not the idiot. You're making sure an adopted child's future is good by ensuring your brother-in-law is in the right mind. Brother-in-law is not fit to care for a child at the moment. There are many steps taken to make sure a parent can take care of a child during adoption. No need to have his high hopes for it. My in-laws and my husband never had a great relationship. My in-laws thought mistreating my husband was normal for all families and they shouldn't be held accountable for it, but of course my husband wasn't happy. So once we moved out together after being together for 5 years, my husband decided to limit contact. We still talk to them, but just to check on them, and we only visited once in 2 weeks, just to keep some slight minimal contact, but not too much. My in-laws claim they love me during our first years together, but they always try to get my husband to date another woman they thought was a better fit for him. That woman had tried to get between us multiple times and she took pride in the fact that she was trying to be a home wrecker. Even after my husband and I got engaged, that woman still tried to sneak in, but my husband would block her every time. Despite knowing the damage this woman tried to cause, my in-laws still kept close contact with her and hung out with her. In my face, unprovoked one time, they claimed that they'd hang out with whoever they wanted and any issue we have is none of our business. I was hurt that they preferred another woman over me and the fact that they valued this woman more than their own son and brother and his happiness, but there was nothing we could do. We took the approach that you can hang out with whoever you want and we have the right to set our own boundaries and decide if we're comfortable with that or if we should just distance ourselves. So that's what we ended up doing. We made sure not to include them as much in our wedding preparations either. We didn't trust that they wouldn't leak vendor information to that woman since they always favored her and we had suspicions that they enabled her too. Recently, I gave birth to 2 twin girls. My in-laws came to meet the babies, took pictures and all, and my husband's sister sent several pics of the babies to that other woman. That woman texted my husband pics of our babies and claimed how beautiful the babies are. Sister-in-law admitted she sent the pics and she was unapologetic about it and claimed she doesn't need our permission to text pictures to people. My in-laws all claim we are being too dramatic over this. My husband and I decided not to let my in-laws and his siblings see our babies any longer. They claim that doing this is an idiot move because we're only doing it because I'm jealous of that other woman. Indeed, I am. I'm bitter about whatever has happened and how they enable her, but I'm also hurt about our boundaries being crossed every time. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot, and your sister-in-law is wrong. She does need your permission to share photos because you're the parent and she has no right to put your kids' safety at risk by distributing them to anyone. You and your husband need to send a clear message to this other woman she needs to get a life and back off, and your in-laws need to be given conditions if they do visit due to, at this point, not being able to be trusted. Wow. What a family. They literally invited a stalker into your life. I mean, I understand this woman has a crush on your husband, but this is crazy. She will try to get into his life no matter how she can, always undermining you. For all we know, she's super crazy and was looking at your babies thinking, all these will be my stepkids someday. Since they continue to feed the fire, you are absolutely within the right to protect your family and those babies. Op, your kids are basically used in this weird drama your in-laws and women are creating. Any chance he'll file a restraining order on the woman? Any contact from her would be harassment. You're not jealous. You're protecting your family from an intruder. Anyone else that sides with this threat and encourages her is your enemy. They brought this on themselves. Your sister-in-law must be banned permanently from your life. No exceptions. Not ever. She made her choice and proved her loyalty. My daughter, tween, has had a rough year. She started middle school and it wasn't an easy transition for her. What made it worse is a bully she faced. We'll call her Olive. Olive has made fun of my daughter nearly every day over her hair, the way she talks, certain interests, her weight, etc. I've reported it, as has my daughter, but Olive is smart and knew to do it when no adults were present or could hear. This typically happens at lunch. Unfortunately, switching schools is not an option right now, but we will be moving this summer due to unrelated reasons, so we hope that'll help. Recently, however, Olive started getting bolder. She put gum in my daughter's hair during class. The teacher saw and sent her to the office, my daughter to the nurse. Luckily, they got the gum out without cutting it. The school finally took it seriously and Olive got into trouble. I also insisted on a meeting so this could get resolved. They finally listened all this time later. In the meeting, I laid it all out. How awful Olive has been, the nasty things she said, my daughter crying often, the school's absolute negligence. Olive's mother was apologetic but added, she's had a tough year. Her father died. I feel like she's acting out. I said, frankly, I don't care. Your daughter has harassed mine for months now and has had zero consequences. Get your act together so mine isn't traumatized. The mom began to cry. The principal said, Olive and my daughter would receive counseling separately and Oliver received a day of in-school suspension. Due to where we are in the school year, classes can't be switched, but they only have 2 classes together and both teachers have agreed to switch seats so they're on opposite sides of the room. My daughter and I are pleased with the situation. I was telling a friend about the situation and she called me heartless for what I said to Olive's mom. I pointed out that Olive didn't care what my daughter had been through. She also lost a parent a few years ago or the pain she was going through. My daughter didn't bully anyone. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. This is information that may explain Olive's behavior, but it doesn't excuse it and there should still be consequences for it, especially when someone is being traumatized by the actions of the explanation. She said she excused it. She was doing what most mothers would do in this situation and actively trying to work out why her daughter is doing it as well as offering an explanation. If the school didn't know about the bullying, then the mother may not have known about it either considering there was no proof until now. So how is she the idiot when Op decided to go off on her? Op is the idiot here, and I pity the kids. I disagree. I hate it when schools would make you sit through bullying seminars and they would always say things like, you don't know what your bully is going through or people that bully are often bullied themselves. Like, yeah, but that's not an excuse. I literally ask you to have sympathy for people who have zero empathy for you. Op, you are not the idiot. If she was lashing out at everyone, that would be something that maybe was a result of her dad dying, but she isn't doing that. Instead, she's targeting your daughter. It isn't your job to help this girl find healthy coping techniques for her grief, and it isn't your daughter's job to be the outlet for this girl.